Barbara.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're three Black moms.
If you have a pet, or some of us call them animal companions, in your household, whether it's fur, feathers, or fins, eventually you're going to have to talk to your kids about your pet, your member of your family, crossing the rainbow bridge. Now, the rainbow bridge is what they call it when we have to put pets down or when they just die naturally. And we wanted to talk about this. And right now, we as a family are going through this. My dog is 14 and a half, a little older than that because she'll be 15 in October. She has kidney disease, which means that we have to start flushing her kidneys at home. She has a dry eye. She has uh, arthritis in her hips. So she has trouble getting up and doing stairs. She's a little old lady. She's a little old lady. And when your pets get older, you have to have the same kind of talk with your children and with your family about end of life care, when it's time, how much to handle, and how much they can handle. And this is my third dog as an adult. We had a dog growing up and she died after I had left home. And I remember grieving after my father called me and told me that she had died. And it just, when you leave home after your childhood pet is still there, you forget how much that you have counted on that presence. It doesn't change when you get older. And the thing is, with kids, sometimes the death of a pet may be their first brush with death. And so, sisters, today we want to talk about how to prepare our kids for the death of a pet because we need to be as sensitive as possible. And I would say encourage them to talk about it before it happens if you can, as your pet gets older or if they get sick, because sometimes even young animals get sick and get cancer or get hit by a car or just go away and they just don't come home. So I don't know if it's ever going to be easy because death is never easy. But with my dog currently, we've had her since Sarah was 10 years old. So she grew up with this dog in her house. Before the dog we had a dog and she died when Sarah was 6. And then we went 4 years without a dog until Sarah came to me and said, Mom, we have to get a dog. And I would encourage you to talk about end of life care, what your life is going to look like, and to be unashamed to grieve. Because if they see you crying, if they see you grieving, you're telling them it's okay, that this is someone that you loved and that you're not going to see them again, at least not on this plane. But how do you tell your kids and how do you talk to your kids about when it's time for their pet to cross the rainbow bridge? Barbara, I remember when Lavinia had a hamster, I want to say, and when the hamster died, you had her call me because my dog had just recently died. And I still remember that, and I don't even remember how old Lavinia was. She was pretty young though.
Yeah.
But I think that was a good idea to have her talk to somebody who had those same feelings. I hope it helped.
Well, I am sure it did because I am a woe begone person with my kids' pet ownership. I remember, I think the first pet that they had that was significantly larger than a fish in a bowl was probably their turtle. And the turtle somehow got lost on one of the trips. I think it had crawling away, and you think they're so slow you're going to find him. It had crawling away into the grass somewhere at some park. We never found him. But I think um, the one that really caused me to bawl. See, it's like the larger they are, the more serious it is, because I was upset when they were not allowed to bring their birds when Eric went into seminary and they said no pets. And I says, well, birds are just in a cage. They don't do anything. And they said, well, you can't have any kind of pets because of other people's allergies. And I was crying about that. They weren't even dead, but we had to give them away to somebody, the kids' birds, and they've become attached to them. But the hedgehog, when the hedgehog died, she was lying. Her name was Sonic. She was in the cage and she wasn't moving. And she had been sick. She had had a tumor. And I remember I had to have Eric come and get her because I was crying, and I didn't even want to tell John that Sonic had died. It was hard for me, and I'm not a big pet person. And the next biggest animal they had was a rabbit, but they ended up giving the rabbit away. So we didn't experience the death of that particular animal. I know for Sonic, we had a funeral. We had some words over the animal. We actually did a real ceremony for the animal. And there was an episode I saw recently on Everyone Loves Raymond where the Allie's um, hamster had died, and he tried to fool her because they found him in the freezer. Somehow he had gotten into this box of popsicles that had been left on the counter and put away in the freezer without them realizing that he had crawled into the box. And so when they found him, he was inside the freezer. And the dad Raymond tried to like fool her by running quickly to the pet store, getting another pet that looked just like him. Soon as she saw him, she goes, "That's not Pumpernickel," and so then they had to fess up that Pumpernickel had gone to a better place. They had a funeral. Everybody was there for him. They dug a hole in the ground, and and then I think she wanted a different pet that was going to be bigger. And Raymond looks at his wife and goes, "Well, that's going to be a bigger box." So you know, uh, and they had a humorous side to it. But you were sensitized to the fact that a child will feel deep sadness over the loss of their pet. And I don't remember how I came across this book that was given to me, Where's Stitch? But it is the perfect kid book on talking about when your child's pet passes away. And it talked about the memories that you remember about your pet that has been there, and how the pet is always in your heart even though you don't see him anymore. And then that movie, that kids movie came out, All Dogs Go to Heaven. And it's okay to tell your kid, yeah, he went to doggy heaven. Just to be soothing to your child, because those are hard things. Even I remember my cousin Paul he'd had his dog for many years, and when he passed away, he had posted on Facebook this very elaborate video of times that he had with his pet. And it was so moving that you were crying. It was like you were watching the animal's funeral as you saw, because it was very, very intricate and very well made. And you got all into, the whole friendship. I've lost my best friend, and you're like watching this movie and crying. And I'm like, I don't even own a dog, but I'm like, so I think it is good to be open to being a soothing force in your child. And if your dog or cat or whatever your pet is you start to see them exhibiting signs of being about to pass away, to go ahead and have that talk about the end of life issues for their pet, and to be as comforting and soothing as you can, as if you were dealing with a person, because this animal has become a part of their family.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing, is to know that your animal friend has become part of your family. They are part of the family. So the grief process is going to be the same, just as if a relative passed away. I think the thing you don't want to do is say, oh, they're just a dog, or they're just a cat, or what are you crying about? It's just a bird.
Yeah,
That's,
don't do
that's
that.
someone who, one of the YouTube channels that I follow, the host, he has a pet rooster who recently passed away, and he was grieving just terribly, and he did a whole memorial to the rooster, and you saw scenes with the rooster and the family, and the rooster and his new daughter, and the rooster and his wife, and all these touching family moments, because he really, I mean, he was grieving heavily. I mean, he would bring the rooster onto the show, and all of that.
Yeah,
Rue was his name. And when you have bonded with an animal, you feel the pain of loss, and you feel the sadness even when they're going through the end of life signs. Just like when an elder person is starting to show signs that, okay, they're going back and forth to the hospital, they're having ailments, and what that, the signs that this is, they're preparing for the end. Now I'm always a little bit on the out the box, as they say. So I have been following many animal communicators that help people. They're certified in interspecies communication, and they help people bridge that gap to know what the animal's feeling. Is the animal saying they need help transitioning? Because sometimes it's hard to make that decision. Do I take them to the vet and have them euthanized? Because people still haven't accepted euthanizing human beings, even though some people say, look, just let me go, give me the stuff so I can get out of here, I'm suffering. So people still have a problem with that, but they will not let an animal suffer when that all they're going to do is just feel pain forever. Now they'll hook up a human being and let them just agonize for years, but they won't do that to a dog or a cat.
And
got to look at that and say, okay, are we really understanding the transition out of body in a healthy way, so that we can help our children understand it and accept it and realize that no one's ever gone. The spirit is an eternal entity. It never is gone, but you do transition out of body. So helping a child understand that. And then I think it's great when you can even show respect for that life by having a funeral, a ceremony, something to help people through the grieving process, because that's what the funeral is for.
That is.
Okay, I've got a couple of stories here that I'm going to tell on myself. And when you were talking about the Everybody Loves Raymond, I kind of did that. And that's why I have not been able to fool my daughter since she was 4 years old. Well, as many people,
Nala's dead again.
Oh yeah, that's that story. When Sarah was 4, I was trying to get her out of my bed where she had been since she was a newborn, and so I got her a betta fish, and one day the fish stopped moving, and I said, "Oh, I think Nala just needs to rest." So I went out and did the Raymond thing and got another one, and she was fine for a while. And then, and I said, see, I told you she's fine now. She's just trying to rest. She just needed to rest. Few days go by, or maybe a week or so, and this one stops moving. And Sarah goes in and says, oh no, she died again.
See, we think we're
honest. Just be honest. Also, the next one story. This is the other one that I don't even remember. So this is how traumatizing I am as a parent. One of my birds died, and this is the thing. I have had birds for more than 30 years. I've raised doves for more than 30 years. I started raising doves when I lived in California a million years ago. And this time, one of my birds, and a sick bird is a dead bird for most time. I've had birds that I've taken to, the vet and they died. And so usually by the time a bird starts, looking sick or feeling sick, they're on their way out already. So if you have a bird, know that once they start getting sick, even if you can take them to a vet, a lot of times they're not going to survive.
Yeah.
So this time, and usually the way they die is that you wake up one day and you look and the bird is at the bottom of the cage.
Mm.
And I told Sarah, and I don't know how old she was then, but she was a little girl. And I told Sarah, oh, that this bird had gone to birdie heaven. And then I wrapped up the bird and threw it in the trash.
No.
Oh. Yeah, see, that's the thing,
And see, she remembers that. And when she told me that, I was horrified. Maybe I thought
Heartless.
but you weren't thinking.
You know what? You got to get the dead bird out of the house, because I also had a live bird there, and you don't know whatever it is that it can, pass
disease or
on to
whatever.
the other one.
But that's the thing, being sensitive to the fact that this is a being that someone loves, and so how you treat the remains, it matters. The person whose
Pet it is.
channel I watch, his name is Michael Sandler, and his show is Inspired Nation, and his rooster Rue had recently passed away, and he just did a whole, I think, an hour-long tribute to him. And you could really see that they mourn this rooster, they grieve this rooster. This rooster was loved and part of the family and all of that. I think they did a whole funeral thing for him. But you have to do those things because that does help in the grieving process and help validate the child's feelings about that. And
that goes with any person. Sarah's roommate had a couple of cats, and one cat got really sick, and she had called me, and I had actually gone over and sat with the cat until she got home from work, and she ended up having to put the cat down because they pretty much told her it was going to cost $6,000.
Oh.
And I was looking at it, and she says, I just don't have that. And I said, listen, don't make a decision based on money, because you know what, I can find that money for you if you need it. But she didn't want to do that, and she just was so afraid that he was suffering. So I brought the other cat so the other cat could say goodbye, and she held him. And so everyone that loved her was there with her when she had to put her cat down. And I think she regretted it. And then I said, whatever decision you make right now is the right decision. But the thing is that the fact that she had people surrounding her that helped her to help her cat transition made it better for her, and she was okay to grieve. Also, when you have a pet that dies, and especially if it's your child, if your child is in school, let your teachers know. Let their teachers know, and hope that they will be sensitive to that, because a lot of times people are not sensitive to that if they're not pet people. Even at work, people will dismiss that, and what are you going? But when my dog, when Olan died, I had people at work who told me, if you need to take some days off, you can do that, but they were all pet people, or they knew.
Right. Yeah.
They knew how I felt about her. And that's the thing is, and so if that happens with your child and your child is at school, the same way you would tell them if a relative died, let your teachers know and let them know if they need to go and talk to a counselor. And I'm not going to be ashamed to tell you this, and to acknowledge that a lot of my therapy that I talk to with my therapist is about my dog, is about the feelings that I have about my dog in getting to the end of her life, because that's a stressor for me, and that's anxiety producing, and it causes me depression. And so I have to own that. And just the way it does that for me as a baby boomer old lady is going to do the same for your child. Your child may go through depression. They may go through, anxiety, and let them do that, and let them know that it's okay, and get them help so that they don't get stuck, and that eventually you can start talking about not replacing, but adding someone else to their family.
Right.
I was
And
very
learn the lesson. Do not try to don't try to hide it by getting another thing where they kind
That
of look
looks
like
just like it.
because they will
no,
know.
no, that doesn't work,
It
even when
doesn't
they're 4.
even therefore they know. Because the thing is everybody is a soul. And just because you get a body that looks like that person, they're gonna feel that this is not the same
Yeah,
soul.
yeah.
It's just like if somebody came over here, look, they might look just like me, but you know it wasn't me. Even if they had all the facial features, you would just know. You feel that that's not the same spiritual energy signature as the other
Learned
person.
that from watching Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah.
Yes. That's how they knew.
People in the pods and stuff. Yeah, you can't duplicate something that's gone. So the important thing is to validate your child's feelings, to go through the grief process with them, to know that they're going to go through the signs of grief, all the stages of grief that you go through when someone transitions. They're going to feel all of that. And like you're saying, let their teachers know if they're in school, and hope the teachers are sensitive. And if the teachers aren't sensitive,
Then we got a whole other story on that, but
yeah, that's another.
that's a whole other show.
Teachers aren't. I mean,
There are
they're
some
sensitive
teachers.
when your family members pass away, your human family members pass away.
Right.
How come she's not doing her homework? Well, her mother just died. Thing,
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
So a lot of times but that's each human being, and some people are very sensitive. So we would hope that if a child is going through that with a family's animal companion, family member, friend, that the family can go through that grieving process together and be there for because sometimes the animal may transition at home. And I think Duchess, when she passed
away, died at home.
She was at home because I think Mom had said one day she looked up the steps because she slept down in the basement. And one day she looked up the steps like, I just can't make it up them steps no more. And she didn't. I think she felt just passed away on her bed. Now the thing is, I don't know if I ever told you all this because I'm one of the people that see disembodied.
You told me that you saw her.
Saw her, heard her. You could have the sound her nails used to make on the floor when she found by the back door. I heard the sound of her nails and on the floor. And next thing I saw her with her head, she used to put her head on our bed, all of that. So I experienced her spirit.
So you know that she was okay. Wherever she was, when she crossed the bridge, she was okay. And that's the thing. You could also, which I was thinking that there's a nice story. I think I've seen it on a couple of different sites where this kid, wrote to God about the pet and enclosed the picture, and it went through the mail. And apparently someone took that, remember that, and they said, and they brought the picture back, says, yes, your pet, arrived safely. I knew who he was right away. And to depict the story, I think it's like a book like Barbara's book, but it was from Mr. Rogers.
Yeah.
Sent back the picture and said, you can keep this because we know that your pet is safe here. And you know what? Encourage your child if they're young enough to draw a picture or write, or maybe even if they're older, because sometimes teenagers are kind of too cool. And it hurts them, like, you know what, do whatever you need to do. If you don't want to talk about it or you're embarrassed,
draw pictures about it, write about it,
whatever you need to do. Take a walk. Don't get rid of all their stuff right away.
Exactly.
But but do something. Or not. I mean, there are things that for my dogs that I still have. But do what you need to do and encourage. And sometimes we forget about teenagers, because teenagers, they're in that weird, they're in that weird state where they want to be taken care of and independent. And you're just like trying to make sure that every day that you don't with them half the time. So this may hit them differently because they may be embarrassed to talk about their dog or their cat, or their fish, even, or their bunny or whatever dying when they are 14, 16, 17 years old, and say, you know what? if this is something that you don't feel comfortable talking about, either talk to if you don't want to talk to someone, take a walk, journal, write a song, listen to something, go wherever you need to do to privately grieve.
Yeah.
And and if you can't do that, if you feel embarrassed, don't be embarrassed, and don't be afraid to cry in front of your kids.
Yeah.
They
Don't
need
be
to know
afraid to show them that you're grieving too, that I don't know. We didn't see mama cry, growing up, but I'm a big crybaby, and Sarah's seen me cry all the time. She, her whole thing is, Mom, don't cry. So I cried everything. But that's the thing, is that she already knows that
okay to cry.
And your heart.
It's okay to cry. That we cried Little Mermaid. So
Yeah.
so it's okay.
I cried during the credits.
I was crying because I didn't get any popcorn, but that's a whole nother thing. But let your children know that it's okay to cry, that if you're grieving, we need to stop trying to tell our kids, especially our boys, people, to buckle up and be a man and be stoic. If you don't cry tears, you may cry bullets later. Sometimes grief and sadness will present as anger more often than in boys and men, because they haven't been allowed to
express any other emotion,
express anything else. So anger comes out as, or grief comes out as anger. They may want to punch a wall, or those of us who
done that. Mm-hmm.
Well, those of us who read, Catcher in the Rye, where he talks about breaking all the windows, in the garage when his brother died. Well, when you read that as an adult, you realize this is somebody who was traumatized by the loss of a sibling, and it was never addressed.
Yes.
And so we need to address in the same way we need to address this fur or feathered or finned sibling that your child has. And don't say right away, we'll get another one.
Oh yeah.
Would, it's like people when they lose a child, people say, oh, you'll just have another
baby.
Yeah, right.
Like, why would you even say that?
Yes.
Don't say that. What to say?
Don't say that they're in a better place. You don't know. You say, I hope that they're happy now. They're not in pain anymore. I hope we will see them again, if that is part of what your faith is. But you can say, you know what? We will always love
and remember.
And we will always remember.
Yeah.
And when time comes, then we can talk about, getting another member of the family.
Right.
But we don't have to go out the next day, and we don't have to even go out to
replace somebody right away.
Yes, exactly.
And sometimes if you don't know what to say, sometimes a hug and I'm sorry is enough.
It's enough. It's more than enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you don't know where to go, like Cheryl said in a previous show, Google is your friend. You can type in, I lost my dog.
Yeah.
Or my best friend died. And you will find tons of sites,
books
that will lead you to a place where you can express it. There are even groups where people can get together and commiserate their losses together in a healthy, controlled way, where someone isn't going to use that to exploit you.
Absolutely. Well, we've got to go. If you have someone who is possibly grieving over the loss of an animal friend, give them a call, just like you would if it were a member of the family, because it is, and say, I'm sorry. And
sorry for your loss.
I'm sorry for your loss. And, I'll be praying for you. Whatever words of comfort, but definitely respect.
Acknowledge. Yeah, and acknowledge their grief.
Acknowledge their grief. Well, we've got to go. Make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the bell icon so you can get notices every time we go live. And of course, like us on Facebook and share it with your friends. And until next time, I'm Naeem.
I'm Cheryl.
I'm Barbara. We are 3 Black moms. I'm Barbara.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're 3 Black Moms.